Welcome to the Jeremiah Show. My very special guest today is Scotty Barnhart, director of the iconic Count Basie Orchestra. The Jeremiah Show and Candid Records are excited to announce the September. Let me do that one more time. I don't usually do shows at 8 a.m.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right.
I need more coffee today.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. I'll do it again.
Okay.
Welcome to the Jeremiah Show. Good morning. My very special guest today is Scotty Barnhart, director of the iconic and world famous Count Basie Orchestra. The Jeremiah Show and Candid Records are excited to announce the September 15th release of Basie Swings the Blues, the latest recording by the Count Basie Orchestra under the direction of Scotty Barnhart. This extraordinary record fuses the Count Basie Orchestra's signature style of sophisticated swing with the raw and soulful talents of the greatest blues and jazz artists of our times. It's featuring a stellar lineup of blues icons and contemporary stars, including Buddy Guy, Bobby Rush, Keb Mo, one of my favorites, Robert Cray, George Benson, Shemkia Copeland, Ledisi, Mr. Sipp, Lauren Mitchell, Bettye LaVette, and Charlie Musselwhite. Produced by Scotty Barnhart, along with Grammy Award-winning producer John Burk, who did Ray Charles' Genius Loves Company, and Grammy-winning drummer and producer Steve Jordan, the Rolling Stones. This album takes listeners on a captivating journey through the heart and soul of American music and showcases a shared musical language that powerfully impacts the listener. And we're playing 7 of the songs throughout the show today. So you're getting a sneak peek. This is a very, very special show and such an honor to be able to play the music for you. You're hearing it here first. At the end of the show, we're going to play the new single, I'm a Woman, featuring Shemkia Copeland, Buddy Guy, and Charlie Musselwhite. It's out streaming now, so check it out. But don't go anywhere yet. You're going to hear it here. We're going to talk to Scotty. Scotty is back on the show. Welcome back, Scotty. So good.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Jeremiah, for having me. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You've done it again. Bravo. Such a great album.
Thank you.
I've been up. I got up at 5 a.m. this morning and just started, like, first cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Started playing the album, and I'm like, wow, like my hair standing straight up. I wasn't sure if it was the coffee or the music, but I think it was a little bit of both.
Good. Mm-hmm.
You've created a timeless musical experience that celebrates the essence of the blues in the context of the irresistibly electrifying, enduring swing of Basie. That's a quote that I really liked, and I agree with it completely. But before we talk about the new album, Basie Swings the Blues, which you're here to talk about, which is released again, reminding listeners on September 15th, I was hoping you would take me back, and also the listeners, some very familiar with the Count Basie Orchestra, maybe some new listeners that don't know much about the Count Basie Orchestra or have never heard the Count Basie Orchestra. So if you could kind of maybe take us through, it's a long history, I know, and that's a lot to ask of you, but if you could take us through some of the highlights from inception and then up, to present day as with your history.
I can do that, absolutely. Well, the orchestra began in 1935, but before it began, Count Basie, who was a pianist, he was born in Red Bank, New Jersey in 1904, and he began his career as a silent movie pianist. Back in the 20s when the movies didn't have any sound, the music was actually done live in the theater. The pianist or the organist would sit there and watch the movie and play and compose the music on the spot. So that's how Basie really began his career. And then he joined the vaudeville group. The vaudeville, if the young people don't know that term, vaudeville is a show business term that means the group that you're listening to has a variety of acts in it. They have comedy. They'll have a comedy act. They'll have a singer. They have a band. They'll have a, maybe a ventriloquist or something. So Basie joined this vaudeville act, and they were on tour all over the states, and they ended up in Oklahoma. And so when he was in Oklahoma, in his hotel room one night, he heard a band on the back of a flatbed truck going down the street. Heard them playing, and they were playing the blues, and they were playing it in such a way that he hadn't heard before. So he went outside to see who the band was, and they were Walter Page and the Blue Devils. Walter Page was a bass player, but he was playing tuba at that time. So Basie fell in love with the band. He ended up, getting in touch with the guys, and they ended up inviting him to join one of the orchestras in that area, which is the Oklahoma area and the Kansas City area, called the Benny Moten Orchestra. Benny Moten was a pianist. So Basie joined his orchestra as second pianist and arranger, and they did a bunch of recordings, from 1930 or so to 1934, and then all of a sudden Benny Moten died. And Basie was sort of the de facto leader anyway during his term in that band. So when Benny Moten died, it was a natural thing for Basie to take those same musicians, and now it became the Count Basie Orchestra. So that's how the orchestra began 88 years ago. And the thing that set them apart from other orchestras is that they had a way of playing the blues, stumping them and shouting them, but with a different beat to it. It was more of a beat that really made you want to dance. Early jazz comes out of the military brass bands and all of that. And so that was a sturdy kind of, in your face kind of thing, not really thinking about making people dance to it. Basie took the opposite approach. He wanted people to be able to snap their fingers and pat their feet and that kind of thing. So he smoothed it out a bit.
Was that controversial at that time?
No, not really. Because
real danceable?
No, because it sounded so good. That's why it wasn't controversial. Anything that's new that sounds good, people don't really care. If it didn't sound good, it probably would have been controversial then. But it sounded good, so people wanted to dance. So the Basie Orchestra began its career really as on the path of becoming the most requested dance band and the most listened to and the most enjoyable band to dance to. You had other big bands too, Ellington and Jimmy Lunceford and all these, Fletcher Henderson, all these great bands. But Basie's band, with the addition of the guitar in the rhythm section, bass, piano, drums, and guitar, the guitar is what set him apart. And even to this day, that is what defines our sound. It's the guitar, it's the mixture of the guitar in there. He's not too loud, but he's right in there, and that gives the rhythm section an extra little bit of a lilt, So anyway, Basie began to play. All the other musicians began to recognize that, okay, that's where we want to be. So he started attracting all these great musicians. Lester Young, one of the greatest tenor saxophone players ever. Billie Holiday was Basie's first vocalist. Then you had Helen Humes, all of these great musicians that began to want to work with him. And then you had all the great vocalists beginning in the 50s that wanted to sing with him. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Tony Bennett. Everybody wanted to sing with Basie. And they all did and recorded with him too. So the orchestra began to really make its way when it began to do international tours. The word got out in Europe, and they did a command performance for the Queen of England. They did tours in Europe and Sweden one time, I understand. When they got to the airport, they couldn't land the plane because there was too many fans on the runway. That's a true story.
Wow.
1954, yeah.
Who would they be comparable to? I love this.
It was like, yeah, man.
Who would they be? It would be like, would it be like, I don't know, who would you compare them to today like that? I mean, that sounds like the Beatles, or
it would be something like that. And for their time period, and for a little while, they were like that because a lot of the records were underground records, and the people in Europe got them. And the first International Jazz Festival was in 1948 in Nice, France. The orchestra didn't do that, but that put them on the map too. That kind of added, because then more people wanted to find out, well, who are the other great bands? Who are the other musicians we can get over here to Europe? And that's kind of how they began to start traveling internationally. And then again, everybody wanted a band, and they sounded like no one else. So they began to just refine and refine and refine. And the thing is that Basie, what he did, that's still genius when you think about it to this day. He made the orchestra itself the star, not him. He didn't make it to where if he didn't show up, it would just be over. Basie's not here, let's cancel the gig. No, that's why we're still here. The orchestra became the star, meaning
how did he do that?
But he put the spotlight equally on all musicians. That's how you do that. So when you go to hear the orchestra play, even today, I make sure everybody is soloing. Everyone, the drummer, the bass player, our 5 saxophones, trombones, trumpets. You know, we have enough time to do that. So the orchestra begins to become the star itself, and that gives everybody a level of responsibility that they want to live up to. And so that's why Basie never had to worry about finding musicians, and that's why when people got there, they stayed until they died, basically, most of the times, you know. So then, you know, they started working with Frank Sinatra. That was more of a high tier level of engagement in Vegas and all these places. And Jerry Lewis put the orchestra in his movie, Cinderella, in 1959. He could have gotten any, when it came, Cinderella, by the way, if you haven't seen it, or for the listeners that haven't seen it, it's the male version of Cinderella, starring Jerry Lewis. And you can look it up.
It's on my list. I
Yeah.
can't believe I've never seen it, but it's on my list.
You got to see this movie. So in the climax, the main scene of Cinderella, or the main part of the movie, is the dance scene when Jerry Lewis gets to dance with Cinderella. And when it got to that scene, he could have gotten any band on the planet Earth. He could have gotten Ellington. He could have gotten, you know, Woody Herman. He could have gotten anybody, but no, he got Basie because he knew that was the right orchestra to get. So that movie went to #1. So that also catapulted the band to a whole nother stratosphere as far as pay, as far as touring and all of that. They began to get booked by the Willard Alexander Agency. And Willard Alexander was the major booker. So then they began to be on the road 300 days a year. And a couple other things that happened when they went to the moon in 1969. The first music that they played on the moon was the Count Basie Orchestra. Neil Armstrong had a tape recorder in his capsule. When they touched down, he hit play, and when he hit play, it was the Count Basie Orchestra with Frank Sinatra singing "Fly Me to the Moon."
I did not know that. That's
yeah. So when I give lectures, that blows people's minds. When I give lectures on that, they're like, "What? Yeah, but that happened." And so they just began to do a lot of things that were really, really innovative. Like Basie is the one that invented the 5-person saxophone section, what we call the split tenor saxophone section, with the tenors on either end, the altos in the middle, and the baritone on the other end. Basie did that. And then he added 4 trombones, and they began to refine the little particulars that makes a band good. The swing part of it. But again, even when bebop came and Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and Dizzy Gillespie and all those guys began to get, come through with what they were doing, he didn't oppose that either. He said, well, we can add elements of that as long as the people can still feel the beat. So he was always concerned with people being able to dance. That's why even as a kid, when I first heard the band, I was like, oh man, that sounds. I'm a little kid bobbing my head. That sounds good,
You were dancing? Did you dance, Scotty?
Yeah, just trying to do that. So Basie was, and then on top of that, he was a nice guy, and so everybody began to recognize that the Count Basie Orchestra was one that they would make you feel good. They would make they would always sound good. He was a nice guy. He always had a smile on his face. So when you go to hear the orchestra play, you just feel better. You want to go hear them play. And every musician that ever went to that orchestra never had anything bad to say about him, ever.
You knew him, right? You knew the family really well, and
I know the family now. I saw him live before he died.
Okay.
I never met him personally, and I came back close to meeting him. He was in this hotel room. I was in the lobby with the band when I was a senior in high school. But I know the family now, and so it's just been a joy learning about him and learning. I got all of the Basie records and stuff, and now when I meet people that knew him, it's all the same. He was a lovable guy. Everybody wanted to be around him. The band played all of the presidential inaugural balls. They played every top tier thing you can think of, all in high society in New York. If you get the Basie Orchestra, then that elevated your whatever function you had to see the Count Basie Orchestra sitting there in tuxedos playing for you, or whatever your function was. So, and again, we still do that whenever we can. And but that's a basic history of the orchestra. And lastly, we've won more Grammy Awards than any other orchestra, 19.
Oh, wow.
Basie played on a Grammy Award, and he was the first African American to win a Grammy, 1958.
I was going to mention that if you did, because I thought that was just so cool.
Yeah.
First African American to get a Grammy Award in 1958, which you just said.
Right. And then he went on to win 19. The orchestra has won 19. I've won 2 with them, and we'll hope to keep winning some more.
Oh, Scotty, that's so great. I bet you think about this at certain points, but I bet you think, what would he have thought of me, and how would he be proud of what you're doing with the band?
I think so. I think so, because I'm doing the same thing he did. I'm not doing, this is his orchestra. It's not mine. I'm just here for a minute, So I'm trying to do the same things that he did, play the same things that he played. And I tell the guys all the time, we have a responsibility to meet or exceed what they did when he was alive. when we play a particular tune, how did they play it when he was alive? What did he do? We can't have any area where we're below the levels that he set. So that's always my job. That's what I'm thinking first and foremost. Okay, is this tempo right? Are these dynamics right? Or is it loose and fun? Are the guys having a good time? Is everybody happy on the stage? You know, so I think he would be happy. I think he could come in right now and sit right down at the piano and pick up as if he never left.
Do you ever imagine him there or feel his
Oh, we can
presence?
feel it, man. I can. It's some weird stuff that's happened, man. Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know what this universe is, but I know something. There's some things that we don't know, we don't understand, and we've definitely felt it. I felt it by myself.
Is there?
Oh, yeah.
Can you share that or no?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you one story that I can tell is that before I joined the orchestra, this is probably in the late '80s. I joined in '93, 30 years ago. This is my 30th anniversary this year. So, but before I joined, as a matter of fact, I was living in the same apartment complex that I'm living in now. Not the same exact apartment, but the same complex where I'm living now. I was in a different building. But I had this dream like 3 nights in a row or 3 times. And the dream was I was playing a concert with a band. The band was behind me. I couldn't see the band. But it was in my, not my high school gymnasium, but our rival high school. You know, every school has like a rival school.
Yeah.
And I remember what that gym looked like. And it was at the rival high school's gym. I was in the gym. And I'm playing a solo out front. I know I had on a gray suit, a white shirt, and a red tie. I could see that, and I could see my family sitting down front. And you know, in the gymnasium with concerts, they'll take the goals and bend them back up out of the way, so you know they're not in the way of the audience down there.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that the goals were bent back like that, and you had the audience down on 2 sides, my family down front, friends. I could see that, but I couldn't see the band behind me. I couldn't see it, but in the far back, and on the far back wall, I'm looking right at the very back wall where the people come in, there was a big, huge, oversized photo of Basie, of his face. Just chin up, Basie, to the right.
Yeah.
Black and white. Okay. Now, this is 1988, 89, something like that. Now, I joined the orchestra in 93. The next year, guess where we played? At my old rival high school.
Rival high school?
In the gymnasium.
Wow.
Our uniforms were gray suit, white shirt, red tie. Frank Foster had written a ballad feature for me called What's New, you know, the ballad feature, and you had to walk down front and play the solos. So when he called What's New, back when Foster was leading the band, like today, I'll write a set list out and print it out for the guys or to email it to them so they can have it on their phone so they can get the music up. Foss, what he would do in the middle of one song, he'd mouth the next song. He'd say, "What's new next?" We'd be playing something, and he just figure out, okay. So he said, "What's new?" So by the time we got to playing that song, I knew I had to walk down front to get ready to play this. So as I'm walking down front, I'm just walking down front to play the solo, man. I get down front, and he counts the band off, start playing. And as we start playing, it hits me. The deja vu or whatever you call it, whatever.
Yeah.
Almost fell off the stage.
I was gonna say, did you like?
It was
like shake you?
Man, it was exactly how I looked in my dream. Exactly. Every detail was there. Every detail. So
you saw it ahead of time.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah, man. Yeah. And and that's just one instance. And there's others. That's just one. But that one right there is how do you explain that? You can't really explain that. So, I mean, down to the tie and the shirt and the suit color.
That's incredible.
And the location, everything, man. So anyway, that's why some things you just can't understand as a human being or what that means or anyway. But that's what happened. So, and I'm here. I guess I'm supposed to be here.
You are definitely supposed to be here, and we're so happy that you're here. You've really done some really great things, and this new album. Wow, I can't wait. Oh, I almost can't wait to get to break. Although I love your stories, just so the listeners can hear part of the album. How many directors would you call when people stepped in for Count Basie? Director is the correct term, but you guys call them band leaders or what would he? How would
leaders, directors? Yeah.
How many have come before you, Scotty?
The first was Thad Jones. The first one was Thad Jones, and then Frank Foster. Thad was there for 2 years, and he passed away. And then Frank Foster, he was there for 9 years. He's the one that hired me. And then Grover Mitchell was there for about 8 years until he passed away. And then Bill Hughes, who was in the orchestra for 50. I mean, he was in the orchestra total for 57 years, 10 as director. He was there, and then Dennis McCrell, who was the drummer, he was there for about two and a half years, and then myself.
And you've been
You know,
director for 30 years.
10 years this month. Well, 10 years next
10
month.
years. Okay.
Yeah, September 13th.
But you've been in the band for the
30
orchestra
years.
for 30 years.
30
Okay.
years. Mm-hmm.
Count Basie led the band right until 1984 when he
That's
passed
right.
away.
For 50, exactly 50 years. Yeah, 1935 to 1984. Yeah. They're 50 years.
Are you going to take it for 50 years?
I'm going to be there as long as my health will allow me. Yeah, absolutely. I'll be there until I can't move anymore. I'd love to do that. Absolutely.
You're having fun.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's the greatest thrill in the world. I mean, I was telling somebody not long ago, it's Christmas every day. I mean, it's work. I have to do the work, and you have to have the right people with you and all that kind of thing. But nothing beats when they introduce the orchestra, then they say my name. That is, I can't even tell you what that's like, because that all of the hard work kind of leads up to that. But when you walk out on the stage, now you're there for the people, and now they've come to hear Mr. Basie's product, basically. And it's up to me to make sure that we do the right thing, and we do the right thing. And it's just it's a collective. It's not me by myself. It's a collective. You got to have the right people who understand what Basie was about. We've had people that I've had to let go that didn't understand it, and I don't like to fire anyone. I like to think that people fire themselves.
Yeah.
I don't like to fire anyone, but I do know that the personnel is key. You gotta have the right people. You gotta have the right bass player who understands the note choices and how to walk a certain way. You got to understand the drummer. I mean, the drummer has to understand the drummers. You got to have the right lead trumpet player, the right lead alto player, the right bari player. If you don't have the right people, it's not going to be Basie anymore. So luckily, I understand that stuff, and I can tell you the history of every section, who was in it, and what they did, and how they did it, and how it affected the next people that came after them. So the Basie Orchestra. The reason we're still here and sound the way we sound is because the people that are in each chair understood the people that were before them in that chair. That's really what it is. Butch Miles, when he joined the band, he understood Harold Jones. He understood Sonny Payne, who understood Joe Jones. Lead trumpet player Frank Green, he understands Snooky Young, Byron Stripling, the people, he understands those people. So it's a matter of making sure the right people are there. And I think as long as we have that, we'll be fine for a long time.
Well, as they say, heavy weighs the crown, but you are, you're the keeper of what is the Count Basie Orchestra. So you've got to, I'm sure you have to make you make tough choices from time to time, but really that's what you're there for, right? To really keep it going and keep that culture, that spirit and that sound. And
I have to make tough choices. I had to make one recently, but what I do, I consult people. I toss the idea around. I think about it. I don't act hastily on anything. I have to take my time and really make sure it's the right thing to do. And it's never personal. It's never personal. And the guys they all understand that. So everybody that I've ever had to move on from, we're still cool. Not a problem. Here's what it is.
Well, going back to before we take a break here, we got to take a break coming up here in about a minute. But before we do, you were talking about how Count Basie was such a likable guy. Everybody liked him, and he loved what he did, and he really he took the spotlight and put it on everybody in the orchestra and the band, and gave them their due and their credit, which I'm sure creates a strong bond of loyalty and appreciation. What do you think his secret to being a leader of that caliber with so many big stars through the years, like you said, from Billie Holiday to Miles Davis to Frank Sinatra? What do you think his secret was to being that likable guy and was it just the love of the music? Or?
Believe it or not, it's a very simple answer to that. He treated everybody as human beings first. Simple as that. He didn't treat them as musicians or, people working for him. He treated them as human beings first. Like, good morning, how you doing? How's the family doing? You treat people people like people, then you can get what you need to get from them. As simple as that. He even said that. He said, you treat people like, like they want to be treated, and you make sure your band is happy, then whatever great sounds you're supposed to get, you'll get it. And that's exactly right. So for me, same thing. If somebody has an issue with something, or people, we're all human, so you can't get past that. That's why a lot of coaches don't have success. A lot of CEOs don't have success, because they don't understand you have to treat people like human beings first and foremost. Then whatever job they need to do for you or for your company, whatever, or your team, then you can ask them to do that. You can coach them to do that. But the great coaches and the great leaders, they all understood that. They all understood how to, like Duke Ellington, he would write compositions for people individually. You know what kind of honor that is?
Mm-hmm.
If Duke writes something for you, how much are you going to want to play for him?
Right.
You put your name on it. This is Cootie's concerto for Cootie Williams. So that automatically gives him a certain amount of loyalty that's not forced.
So because he sees them.
Exactly right.
He respects, they respect them, and you get that back. And it really is, like you said, it's very simple. Yeah. Isn't it? It's so simple what we can all do sometimes in life, just to get to a different level and get where we need together, is just treat each other kind.
Yeah, man. It's like, on campus, when I first started teaching at FSU, one of the things, there's this great long-standing tradition, not just at FSU, but I'm just speaking in general at universities with classical musicians, that you never find the students and the faculty hanging out, like having lunch or dinner together. You never, there's always been a divide. This is just what I've seen personally. But in the jazz world, it's not like that. We don't have a generation gap. In Basie's orchestra, whomever the newest guy is can go straight to his dressing room and talk to him. Or call him up in his hotel room and say, would you like, let's have lunch? Okay, no problem. If he's free, sure, he'll go do that. So one thing jazz teaches you is how to make sure you understand that human element. This is just something that I'm trying to explain in a certain way to give people understanding. Jazz musicians, we need each other. You need one another. And so you need the leader. The leader needs the lowest person in his band. He needs that person. He needs to be able to make sure that person is happy. Just because they're the newest, or they're playing the fourth part or whatever it is, doesn't mean they're insignificant. And so Basie understood that no matter what part you're playing, I need that part. I need you too. And I need to make sure that you're cool and you're happy with whatever's going on in your life. So when you get to work with us, come to work, you're good. You don't have to be worried about something. If you needed an extra $100 on your pay, you do that. I heard that a lot from a lot of stories I heard about him. If he found out a guy's family had an issue, he would quietly take care of it and wouldn't say anything about it. Sinatra was the same way. And so that's why people love Sinatra. He understood how to treat people as human beings. So I just think the human element, Basie was blessed to come from a family that taught him that. Some people never learn it. Some people never understand that because of circumstances, they could have been, I don't know, abused or left to be homeless or left or abandoned or whatever. But luckily, Basie came up and had a good mother and father that gave him a foundation of understanding how to treat people well. And it served him well. And it still served him well. I mean, he died in '84, man. We're still going.
That's 40 incredible.
Years ago. That's
incredible.
Unheard of.
And you're dropping a new album here, September 15th. Let me tell everybody about it. The world's biggest blues icons join the Count Basie Orchestra for a very historic recording. The Count Basie Orchestra, directed by my very special guest today, Scotty Barnhart. The album is titled Basie Swings the Blues. The new album, available September 15th, 2023, with Buddy Guy, Bobby Rush, Keb Mo, Robert Cray, George Benson, Shemkia Copeland, Ledisi, Mr. Sipp, Lauren Mitchell, Bettye LaVette, and Charlie Musselwhite. And today we're premiering most of the album and the new single at the very end of the show in its entirety, I'm a Woman, which is featuring Shemkia Copeland, Buddy Guy, and Charlie Musselwhite. It's also streaming right now. We'll be right back.